Hey friends, are you looking to buy or sell a home, or maybe you're an agent seeking a reliable referral partner? The Jeff Sutherland team, brokered by eXp Realty, is here to support your success every step of the way. We take the time to deeply understand your goals and create a strategy that works for you. Whether you're navigating the Phoenix market or just want expert advice, we've got you covered. So visit jeffsutherland.com to learn more and see how we can help you make your next move with confidence. The Jeff Sutherland team, your trusted partner in real estate.
Welcome to the Jeff Sutherland Show. Let's grow today as we learn from decades of real estate and leadership experience.
We want you to know that when you log into this show, you're going to get authentic conversation. We're going to give it to you straight, and it's going to be real. Hey everybody, Jeff Sutherland with the Jeff Sutherland Show, and today we're here with my co-host Bella Loomis, and we are excited because today we're talking about lending. Yes, it's an exciting topic, and actually one that's always being discussed, by people in the industry and people outside of the industry. And a lot of people don't realize this, but in the Phoenix area, and not just the Phoenix area, but around the country, we've had one of the worst affordability markets in like 35 years. The last time we had rates that were difficult to manage along with the prices were in the 1980 timeframe, 1982. So it's been a little bit tougher for buyers to get into homes. But luckily today we're with a business partner of ours that actually does an amazing job getting people into homes and giving them all the options that they can look at before they decide what they want to do. So today I am blessed and honored to have Tracy Elliott on the show. And Tracy Elliott's one of the best lenders in the entire country. She's with Bell Bank Mortgage. And just a little bit about Tracy, she's been in the business about 12, 13 years. And not only does she handle resale homes, but she handles new homes as well. So she has some pretty prominent accounts in the Arizona marketplace where she handles new builds. So it's great to talk to somebody that's handled both new builds and resale. And we're just excited to have you, Tracy. Welcome to the Jeff Sutherland Show.
Thank you, Jeff. I really appreciate being here. It's definitely exciting times. The market is a little precarious, but you've got to have that faith over fear in this environment, and it will get us through.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I got a lot of things I want to talk to you about today, Tracy. I want you to educate us on a lot of things. And
okay.
First of all, you and I, we've been in this business for a while, and I would argue being a lender is just as hard as being a real estate agent. In fact, I would argue maybe it's harder, right? I remember back in 2009, 2006, those timeframes, like when we had the financial crash, the Great Recession, that was a rough time for lenders, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the reality of it is I got into the business shortly after that. So if you want to pick the right timing to jump into the pool is when everything is at its ultimate demise. I mean, I remember because my mom was and actually still is a realtor. My aunt was in title, and I decided to jump into the lending field. And I was like, is this really something I want to get into? Because companies were closing down, people were getting out of the business, but it's all about knowing what you have the ability to do. And ultimately, we're getting people into new homes. We're getting, it's always going to be something that's needed. And that's the kind of industry you want to be in.
It's interesting you say that because I remember in 2009, it was kind of like an extinction event for a lot of people in the industry, especially lenders. And I've been telling Bella got in the business a couple of years ago with me. And quite honestly, I've been telling her this for 2 years. I'm like, yeah, this is one of the worst markets I've seen since I've been in the business. So I've been telling her, listen, if you learn all this stuff now as a foundation, the market will at some point turn, and you're going to be that much more equipped than everyone else. So did you go through any of that yourself?
I absolutely did. I remember people, one of a very good colleague of mine, he told me initially, he's like, if you can make it the first 2 years, you'll be in it for life. He's like, but that's the deciphering factor is those first 2 years, you're figuring everything out, you're learning the ropes. And if you can get in and you can hold on, then this is going to be your career. And, I feel very fortunate that I jumped into a great company right off the bat. And, they didn't even accept unseasoned professionals. So I had to do a little sweet talking to get into the office and prove myself. And, that's just exactly what you do is you jump in, all hands on deck, start learning, start reading, start educating yourself, and then you're going to get through it. And so, Bella, for you, this is going to be an exciting time frame because Jeff's 100% right. I mean, we all went through the last few years of things just being so incredibly almost like you could cast a line and anybody, you're going to get a loan. Nowadays, you're having to do a little bit more work. You're having to be that vetted professional, which is what we all want to be. But back, 2 years ago, you didn't even really have to be. And now you have to be that trusted individual that people come to.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think when I hear statistics, and of course, I don't know the exact one, but I've heard that in a 2-year period, when a realtor gets their license, like 87% of them don't renew in their first 2 years, their license. I mean, those are very difficult odds. Is it similar in the lending space?
I think you're probably pretty close there. The first 2 years, like I said, I don't know what that actual percentage is, but you do. It's a vast majority of people that get in, they try it out, they realize this isn't for them. And a lot of them might transfer into, let's try to be an underwriter or a processor or something else in the industry, but not necessarily taking on that loan originator responsibility because, it is, as you are, it's commission based. It's, get out there, get those clients and keep those clients. And so it is definitely got a lot of probably people who don't make the cut, honestly.
Yeah, because you have to have good financial skills and good people skills, right? I mean, it's like you can know your stuff with the numbers, but if you know how to relate to people, it doesn't help.
Correct. It's all about earning their trust and, having somebody who feels like you're in it for them. I think the way that I've survived throughout the years is my clients know that I do genuinely care about the outcome of their transaction. It's not just, another loan for me. It's me putting them and their family, whether they have kids or dogs or, you get to know these people and they become, I have several clients that are now friends because over the time frame, especially in those new build transactions where you're working with somebody for a year, you really get to know each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, and right now in the Phoenix area, it's almost like people kind of feel like they've got no shot at home ownership. It's like, it's kind of depressing, and so do you ever run across that? And, how do you manage that? How do you take somebody from an attitude that I don't think I'll ever be able to buy a house to like, oh, there's actually some hope here?
So I think the most important thing is just to get them to feel comfortable enough to do an actual application because I get a lot of clients who, number one, they'll call me up and say, hey, Tracy, somebody told me I should talk to you. That's usually how it starts. And then they're like, but I don't think I'm ready yet. And I'm like, well, let's find out if you're ready. Let's look at your assets. Let's look at your income. Let's look at, all of the factors, liabilities, and do an analysis as to what you actually do indeed look like. Because a lot of people can qualify for a home who do not think that they can. And so it's just a matter of, me finding out what their goals are, where their price point is, where, now I will say that the most common question, one of the things I ask people when they're budgeting is, where would you like your mortgage payment to be? And, under $2,000 is a very, very common phrase. And you are correct in Arizona that just, yeah, I heard your chuckle. It's not as common anymore. It's just the price points have gotten higher. That's not very realistic. So teaching people how to be realistic about their goals and what they're going to be getting into and properly setting budget expectations. These are all things that, and I even have a few different worksheets that they can use to, see where their budget is now and what it would look like if they are a homeowner versus a renter, or if they're still living with mom and dad. It's all of those things, but you want them to be, I had a conversation with a client even just last night that she called me up, and it was one of your team members that Chase sent her over to me. And she was in that I don't know where I'm at stage. And so my job is to help her find out where she's at and put her on a pathway to, that home ownership. And it's a matter of some people, it's, hey, you can qualify right now. Let's get you going if you're ready. Not if you're not, but if you're ready and this is something that you want to do, let's get you on board. But getting people in and getting them to have that conversation early, sometimes it's 6 months, sometimes it's a year, sometimes it's 2 years. It just depends on what their circumstances are and what they're looking for.
Now, you kind of read my mind on kind of where I was going with this, because I think some lenders will be like, yeah, you're qualified and this is what we can pre-qual you for, or you're not qualified. I think the
Right.
fiduciary lender like yourself is going to sit down and go, okay, listen, you might not be qualified right now, but this is what it's going to take. This is how long it's going to take. And they give the buyer a roadmap, right? A roadmap as to what they need to do and some of the tactics they need to do. Is that kind of how you help them, Tracy?
That's exactly how I do it, honestly, is it's all about analyzing their current situation, some tweaks that they might need to make if they're not ready now, analyzing, okay, here is what you're able to put aside, each month, and that's what you're comfortable doing. This is what it's going to take to get into the house that you are looking for, ideally, or even as your starter, and it's just a matter of setting up those things. Sometimes it's credit related. It can be one of those where, hey, my FICO may or may not be where I want it. Sometimes you still qualify, but maybe it's not at the optimal terms that you're going to qualify. So it's like, okay, do you want to jump in now because you can qualify? And I mean, I'll defer this to you, but we all know that prices in Arizona have, even though the market's slow, they're still continuing to increase. And like you said, affordability is a factor. So, oftentimes if somebody can get into a home and they're able to, and they're comfortable enough, then we can even continue the process after the fact to refinance them into a better position in the same house, and that might be right for them and it might not be. It's just, is it best to get you in now so that you have that lower potential sales price besides waiting on that appreciation and you gain the appreciation? Or is it better for you to, wait and clean some things up, whether that's credit, whether it's build a little bit more assets, what is it that's right for that person? Because each person is different. They're unique, they're individual, and it can be, I've got everybody from first-time home buyers to investors that have, 5, 10 properties. And so each person's situation is unique.
And last thing on that, that's a good point. You're almost sometimes at a competing interest with the real estate agent, right? Because what happens if you tell the buyer, hey, listen, it's just not right now, and you need to wait a little bit, and because you care about your client's best interest, right? And then you got the agent who's pulling on the other side of the rope going, we want a deal now, right? And
Right.
so I'm sure that when you tell a buyer, hey, listen, you need to wait, and they probably have a lot of respect for you, I would imagine.
I think that that's the most important thing. And the other part is to make sure that your agent is aware of that they're part of the decision. You don't want to feel like you're excluding them from that decision. You want to make sure that they're aware that, hey, we're putting this person on a long-term plan so that they are a future client for you, because it's not quite right for them now. And I will say the agents are, a lot of times you do have somebody who's very excited to jump in to get that deal now. I mean, we're all commission based. We all want to get that deal now, but it is our fiduciary responsibility to make sure that we're doing what's best for the client. And if it's not best for them right now, to set them up for that successful transaction so that they will be, this is going to be a long-term client. And ultimately, if you do it right, you're going to end up with not only them as a client, but potentially, several other clients out of that, because you've now vetted, yourself in, a professional manner, and they're going to refer friends, family, etc. to you.
Yeah, makes sense. So Bella is working with a client right now. Bella can tell you a little bit more. I mean, she's going to these new builds and they're offering ridiculous incentives right now. Right, Bella?
Yeah, my client, we were looking at a new build with 3.99 interest rate. And one of them, another builder, had a rate buy down starting at 1.99. So those are hard to beat. Speaking of purchasing power, and Tracy, you've worked with both resale and new builds. So what are you seeing out there with rates, and what are you kind of foreseeing?
So I think you're correct. Is there in the new build environment, there are all kinds of offers being made. As we mentioned, the environment is a little precarious. Builders are stacking up some spec homes, and so they want to get those out of their inventory. And to do so, they're buying down interest rates in the form of 2-1 buy downs. They're also buying them down straight, like what you said, where it's a 3.99 fixed rate. And they're not all builders are allowed to do this. I'll say that first and foremost. Each builder kind of operates in a unique fashion, and some of them it's because they also own the mortgage company that is being used. So they have additional buying power to do some of these things because the current market rate right now is not 3.99. We all know that. But they have that buying power. They're able to cut into their margins to help that client get to the next position. And, I'm first and foremost, we talked about doing what's right, that fiduciary responsibility to your client. There are times where I will, as a lender, I have somebody pre-qualified. They go into a new build. They have an opportunity at that. They aren't allowed to use me and still get that rate. And so I tell them, I'm like, it's in your best interest to use the builder's lender and get that rate, because ultimately that's what you need to do here and now. Later on in the future, you might call me back up. We might refinance you. We might do something else different because you're not in that situation. But honestly, take advantage of these things that are going on in the market right now, because current interest rates right now, this week's been precarious for sure. It's been a bit volatile this week. We've seen the high sixes, we've seen the low sevens. It's getting there, but this too shall pass. It's always one of those things that a rate is the here and now. We want people to concentrate on the home. What is it that they're looking to get into? Because this isn't an impulse buy. For a lot of people, a mortgage is one of the biggest fiscal, commitments that they'll make in their lifetime. And so they're going to be thinking about it. They want to get into what's right. Sometimes it's like I said earlier, get into it now. Let's refinance you later on if it's a better move for you at that time. I have people who will buy and, make a small mortgage, or vice versa, where they'll do a high mortgage, sell a property that they're in, and then reduce and recast their loan later. So it's all about learning their bits and pieces. But you are 100% correct. These builders are offering some fantastic incentives right now. And if that's the right market for you, it's good to do your due diligence. Have a realtor who's not scared to bring you to those places and, get you in and let you look at them.
And I can tell you, Bella knows what's going on out there in the new home world. She's scouring everything. She knows all the builders. She knows the rates. So, that's what we love to do, is we like to kind of consult with our clients and determine which is the best route. But I wanted to ask you, Tracy, there's a lot of insider language we use in the real estate industry, right? We talk about adjustable rate mortgages, which are called ARMs. We talk about 2-1 buy downs, 3-1 buy downs, FHA, VA. Could you maybe in about 2 or 3 minutes give us kind of a layman's explanation of the differences of these different loans and what they mean? Can kind of give us a little bit more education on what this is all about.
Absolutely. Lending industry is famous for our acronyms. And everybody, it is one of those things where oftentimes you can get confused. I will even tell my assistant on a regular basis, make sure that you spell it out, because not everybody knows what DTI is, so these are the things that we do have to explain to people. So, oftentimes FHA and VA, FHA is your Federal Housing Authority and VA is your veterans. And these are oftentimes used as government-run, programs. Interest rates aren't always higher than conventional, aren't always lower than conventional, but oftentimes they have a little less restrictive guidelines. So you might be able to get into an FHA program over 50% DTI, which is debt to income. And the same with VA. You can get into those programs with having higher liability or debt to income ratios. And you're conventional conforming. So if I'm talking conventional or conforming, and I say Fannie or Freddie, then those are, the other standard conventional, finance options. And you'll see FHFA, you see, all of these different acronyms that come out. But a standard conforming loan, which is the Fannie or Freddie, typically debt to income levels under the 50%, most preferably under 45. And that's one of the things that we as lenders look at. And then credit scores. The FHA will allow as low as 580. Obviously you're going to get better pricing, which is interest rate, if your scores are higher. VA is also allowing lower FICO scores, usually in that 600 and above. Certain programs you can get lower. And then conventional conforming is 600. Always when we're looking at pricing, lenders are risk-based is the easiest way to put it, is if you have higher debt to income levels, lower FICO scores, and oftentimes a lower down payment, then that's considered a riskier loan to the lender. And so that's going to put you in a position where your interest rate may be higher because the risk to the lender that they're giving you on this loan is higher.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So it's interesting how real estate agents need to stay in their own lane. The lender stays in your lane, right? So oftentimes our buyers will say, hey, what do you think we can get qualified for? And I can do a pretty basic, mortgage calculation of what I think the PITI would be, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. But in general,
Right.
I will defer to the lender every time because I don't personally want to be a part of those money conversations. That allows me to really develop a more of an intimate relationship with the client to make sure I really truly know what they want for a house. I kind of like that. I don't like going into the lender's lane, and I like it when the lender doesn't go into my lane. Any comments on that at all?
Oh, absolutely. I think that that's something that, especially having, a family member who's in real estate, I have to constantly remind mom to make sure you give them my number. But it's very important to have your clients talk to you. Like you said, most agents have a basic standard of information. They know with having some client conversations with their client where they stand, if they're concerned about anything. And oftentimes I'll reach out to the realtor and say, did they have any concerns on your initial consultation? Because sometimes they may share something with you that they haven't confided in me yet. But I do try to make sure that they come to me with those hard questions because there's so many different programs and options aside from the FHA, VA, there's USDA, which, we don't have as much of in Arizona, which is more of the rural community when you go to USDA, and then the conventional. And so there's too many things and constantly changing guidelines. They don't just set the guideline and keep them steady. They're changing and altering year after year, sometimes month after month. There's things that come out that are new and improved based on what's going on in the market. And so, my job is to, get my education every single year and keep up on things just like you do with your real estate license. And that's how we determine what program is ultimately going to be best for them, because it might not be a standard 30-year fixed conventional. It might be best for them to get into a USDA or a VA if they've got the option. There's all of these things to look at. And same with, I get a lot of my clients that ask me about their home value. They're like, well, what do you think it's worth? I'm like, I think you need to talk to the agents about that because that is not my area of expertise. When I look at what a house is worth, I'm using the same things they're using, which is typically some online website. And that's, not something that I want to be a source of information on.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to follow up on that, could you tell us again what like a 3-1 buy down, 2-1 buy down
Yeah.
is? Tell us, and then on top of that, like how do you make a determination between which is better, a buy down or a fixed rate? I bet you have those conversations all the time.
Oh, I do. I have that conversation a lot. So basically, the way a buy down works, whether it's a 3-1, whether it's a 2-1, whether it's a 1-1, is the first number. Say, let's use 2-1 for an example because it's the most common. A 2-1 buy down is the first year interest rate, whatever today's interest rate. Let's just say that it's 6.5. I'm going to use 6.5 as an example. That's today's rate. If you're doing a 2-1 buy down, then your very first year, that interest rate is going to be 4.5 for the full year. The next year it's going to go up to 5.5. The third year it's going to go up to 6.5 and stay that for the rest of the 30-year term. So that's how you get the 2-1 buy down. Now, the important things for people to know about 2-1 buy downs or any of the buy downs is they cannot be buyer paid. They have to be seller paid, or they can be lender paid. But in most instances, it doesn't make sense for the lender to pay them. It makes sense for the seller to pay those fees. And the reason why the seller has to pay those fees is because you're basically prepaying the interest rate portion of that buy down. And so as a buyer, why would you prepay your interest rate? You're just, it makes zero sense. The good thing about the 2-1 buy downs, and some of the, buyers are looking at this as, hey, the seller's going to pay the 2-1 buy down. I think that in 2025, interest rates are going to go down. I'm going to refinance that rate and I'm going to get a lower interest rate anyway. And they can do that. And when they do, any of the money that the seller prepaid is going to be able to be applied to that new mortgage. They're not going to get cash back, but they're going to be able to use that for principal reduction on their new home because it is in an escrow account, similar to what taxes, insurance, anything else would be. But so that's one of the things that people are doing. Now, in reverse, if somebody's looking at a long-term buy down, say you have a specific dollar figure, you've got $30,000, you've got $50,000, you have $10,000, whatever it is going to be, to buy down that interest rate. If you can buy something down to a number that is going to be long-term still a good rate for you, why not take advantage of that? Where these 399 lock it in and be done, absolutely, positively, I would do that every day. You do want to look at the questions because I've seen, especially in the new build contracts, there is, sometimes there's processes to where you have a stipulation. You cannot refinance within a certain amount of time if you're doing that interest rate. I've had clients call me and say, I don't want to use their loan because it has this stipulation in it. So you just need to make sure that you're doing your due diligence, reading through that whole contract to see what it is you're signing and what you're signing up for in case there are things that are up, if it's 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road, does it make sense for you to still be in that? At a 399 right now, I would say yes. Jump on that all day long. If it's something that's more in the 5s, maybe that's something you're going to do a little thinking about because you might have that opportunity to do something different naturally if it's in that range.
Yeah. And before I kick it over to Bella, and one of the things that people don't realize is when you go into a builder, the agent on site is representing the builder. Okay. And the builder, they all have their separate contracts and they're not the same for the most part. They're all different. So as a real estate agent, it's my job to read that contract and identify anything that truly needs to be something that's called out and understood by the buyer, right? It's like as a fiduciary servant of the buyer, I need to make sure I go through that before they sign that contract. I highlight the paragraphs that are important because I've seen all these different builder contracts over the years. And in Arizona, we get the benefit, real estate agents, to act as we were attorneys in that real small confined space of real estate contracts. So I take that very seriously because when you look at the resale contract we have in Arizona versus the builder contracts, very, very different indeed. So make sure you talk to your agent to have them review that contract. The worst thing you can do, last thing I'll say on that, is deliver a buyer to the model and have them sign a contract. And you're like, hey, I got to go. Have a great day. Let me know if you have any questions. Believe me, it happens.
It does happen. And one of the other things I tell people, because I have so much, experience with the new build world, is make sure that your clients aren't visiting those new builds by themselves. Make sure that you are in attendance with them and signing them in, because, that way you are there to answer questions or be that, that representative of them when things come up. Because although, most new builds they're great. The sales agents are fantastic. Some people go through the whole process without a buyer's agent per se, but it's nice to have somebody to interpret that, because it's like you said, anytime I start to work with a new builder, the first thing I do is grab that contract, because it's a lot more in depth than, our resale contracts. And I go through it with a highlighter, and I do the same thing as a lender, because I need to know, okay, what section do they usually put any, seller concessions in? What section do they have anything that, there's contracts where I must have their pre-qual done within 10 days and have everything signed off of and a letter over to the builder. Otherwise, that client's money could go hard, and they might not be able to have it back if they don't qualify in the future. So it's very, very important to make sure you're doing your due diligence.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And Tracy, I kind of want to switch back to focusing on your story. I've learned that, very many successful people go through struggle and sacrifice. And like we talked about, that first 2 years in the business. Can you share kind of what you've gone through personally and professionally, just to that's become a real testament to your character?
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest things in this industry, whether you're a lender or a realtor, and I'll dive a little deeper, but you do kind of, your personal life, your work-life balance becomes sometimes difficult. Our clients need us when they're available. And so oftentimes it's nights, weekends, all of those kind of things. So you just have to have your focus. You have to make sure that you are going forward with your clients in mind, and then setting your proper boundaries. And, you learn that in those first couple years. And, with each company that you go to, you learn different things. And, I love the company I work for right now. Bell Bank Mortgage is a fantastic place. And, we're talking about going deep dives and struggles and things of that nature. And I remember when I first came to this company, I had shifted over to being an employee of Bell in October of 2018 was when that happened. And in November of 2018, I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. So that was a pretty difficult thing when you're literally 2 weeks on the job with a brand new company, and you have to learn to shift and adjust. But the support staff that I had here was so phenomenal. It was, I remember giving them a call and saying, hey, I got some news. Things are going to change a lot for me and how I do my job here. And you don't know me. My old company knew me. They knew my work ethic. It's all about developing that work ethic. And they're like, you know what? Once you're part of the Bell family, whether it's 10 minutes or 10 years, you're part of the family. And so that's one of the things that I knew, that this was the right company to come to. And they've been fantastic. They're in line with my personal values. We have great programs that are here. Today, for example, we did our Unequaled Personal Service awards for the company. So these kind of things are important in your work-life balance, because like I said, you've got to go back to that in our industries. And because having those people and the companies around you help you get to those successes that you're trying. We can't be an island. You need to surround yourself with like-minded individuals, companies, associates that are going to help you get to that next success level and push you when you need it and give you grace when you need that. I think that's super important.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And going through what you went through, how does that change your mindset when you wake up every single morning?
I think that you learn to appreciate the small things. That was one thing that's I like to live my life that way, is appreciate the small actions in each day. Look at those because it's important. And I mean, I actually created some great friendships during that time frame, and some of them were with clients that I met. And it is a struggle when you go through life, but everybody has their struggle, no matter what. Every single person that you meet, and that's one of the things that I've learned through my own, is to relate that to my clients and to my personal relationships, is what's going on in their life that makes their situation unique. My struggles were my struggles, but everybody has their own. And so I like to look at that. I look at it as an example of when you're driving through traffic and you're frustrated because somebody just cut you off. And, I'm oftentimes, it's like, you don't know if that person's going to the hospital. You don't know what they're going through. And we have to look at that in our client relationships. I think that it's super, super important. And that's how you become successful, is to do that deep dive and find out, what's going on, and make yourself better through that process by opening yourself up and being more vulnerable at times. For the longest time, I didn't want to, have conversations about things that went on, but I've been able to speak to that. I think I've mentioned in the past, I, like to be involved philanthropically through like Leukemia Lymphoma Society and other organizations in the community. And it teaches you to get out and to do that. And so ultimately, those relationships you build create your successes. And, and those struggles and those things that you learn, even when you feel like you're down at the bottom of, what you are, you're in a pit, it's limited. It's temporary. It's not something that you can't overcome. And you just move on with it. One of my marketing assistants, she laughs at me all the time because probably one of my favorite sayings is, "It is what it is." It's today. This is exactly what it is, and it too shall pass. If it's bad, if it's great, you want to capitalize on it. And I think that that's an important way to look at life and business.
I really love that outlook. And Jeff and I talk about it all the time. It's like, you can't blame others for things that are happening around you. You have to just control what you can control.
Absolutely. I think that, and there are things that are beyond our control, but you can't let those consume you. I think that's the most important thing, is, to look at your circumstances as, if it's an obstacle, it needs to be a short-term obstacle. And attitude is everything. If you can think positively about the long-term goal, then, that's the most important aspect, because that long-term goal gets you to the finish line. If you get a notification about something that's negative in your life, I mean, the first time, I'm actually a 2-time cancer survivor. I started this journey a long time ago, back in 2005. And when I got that phone call, it was on a Friday night at a charity event for St. Joseph's Hospital at about 8, maybe 7 o'clock. And I get a call from my doctor. You don't get calls from your doctor on a Friday night. And they said, "You have an appointment first thing Monday morning. This is what you're going. This is what you're doing." Good thing is, I was walking into a charity event where I was a volunteer to help out to raise money for St. Joseph's. And they were obviously doing great things. And I was like, okay, God put me in the right spot to give me that power to know, okay, this is just what you have to deal with, and you move on. And that's what we all have to do, because each person's circumstances make you who you are today. It makes you better. It makes you stronger.
Wow. That's a pretty powerful story, Tracy. When you look at society, they get triggered so easily anymore, right? And people are kind of on the defense. And what you're talking about is having grace and trying to, I guess, seek first to understand before being understood, and trying to really listen to what people are going through, because we all have some sort of cross we're bearing, and it's life is not easy. I think about what you must have been going through when you had your treatment, and how you were able to work through all that. I look at people and I get a tummy ache sometimes. And I'm like, oh, I'm so miserable. Right. And then you have people that are working through the worst things like chemotherapy and radiation, and they're going to work every day, and it's like, I
Mm-hmm.
think as a society, we have to take the time to slow down and ask people, how are you really doing? What's going on in your life, and I think people are just so afraid to go there with people anymore. I think it's a necessary thing, even in the workplace. Like, people have always said, well, Jeff, you can't be a good boss and be a good friend. I totally disagree. I can be a very objective person with people and tell them straight facts that are very challenging to them out of respect and love, and also be their friend. Right. We have to bring that care and nurturing back into the workplace. And I guess the last thing I'll say too is I do think God put you through that for whatever reason. Maybe it's a platform now. Maybe now you have an
Absolutely.
opportunity to talk about this with other people and empower people like you never could before.
And I think that's honestly a very true statement. I've done a lot of different things in my life, and getting this, you have to look at it as, like you said, God has better plans for us than I did. And I learned that time and time again. And you just want to take that opportunity, because I have had a chance to speak to people who have had and gone through what I've gone through, and them seeing my reaction and how I live my life has given them hope and eliminated some of that fear that they're going through, because they just had, somebody who was diagnosed with something similar. Or, I've had good friends call me and say, what kind of care package should I send to this person? Because I know you've gone through it. And I think that that's important in all of our relationships, is to just dial it down. And like you said, get to know people, and be empathetic, because I know we're lenders, I know we're realtors, but we develop relationships with these people. And that's very, very important to me. You've got to develop that relationship, that trust, and you learn a lot. And moving forward, that's how we succeed in this business, but it's also how we succeed as humans.
Yeah. Thanks, Tracy. We could talk about that one all day. I just appreciate you
Oh,
sharing your
yeah.
story. Um, Switching gears back to the purchasing of a house, if a buyer wants to buy a house, what are
Of
some of the
course.
things that we could be telling our buyers? If Bella and I are out there in the field, what are some of the things we could say? Okay, now you're going to talk to Tracy. She's going to ask you this stuff. What are some of the things that we can tell our buyers? This is what you need.
So the basic things that they're going to need is, I always, like you said, you always want to get them over to me to do, an application, run their situation. I think the important things for me to gather are, income, assets, liabilities. Those are the pieces of information that I need to know about somebody. And so that's what, when I first start a conversation with somebody, I'm like, tell me your story. What is your goal? Are you, again, looking for that first time home? Have you ever done this before? Are you used to, putting money aside? I mean, especially Bella, you probably have a lot of friends that are moving out from mom and dad. They've never even necessarily made a rent payment. So oftentimes you can have them, well, you know what? Here's something that we think will be, maybe if it's $1,500, maybe if it's $2,000, start setting that aside monthly to see if you can work that into your budget. But the things that we're going to need to gather, and I've got a great list and packet of information that people can have, and it's I need, your most two recent pay stubs, your recent two W-2s, 1099s, tax returns. We look for your most recent bank statements. And that's always a fun one, because people get scared when you hear bank statements. I have clients who are very, very well off, and they think I don't need their bank statements because they have more than they need. They could buy this house cash. Well, then they should buy that house cash, because they can't get a loan unless I see their bank statements. You cannot block anything out. If anything is blacked out with a Sharpie on a bank statement or a piece of documentation you give to me, I'm going to ask you for it again. So I always tell people, make sure that you send everything over. I'm going to do my analysis on it, and we're going to get you to where you need to be. And sometimes people are scared of bank statements for the other reason. I don't have enough money to do this. And it's like, okay, well, let's look at the rest of your bits and pieces. And maybe you fit the mold for a down payment assistance program. There's some excellent ones out there right now that can give you that money for down payment. There are sellers. I mean, this is, again, you guys' area of expertise, that are offering great concessions right now to help with closing costs. So, I mean, we can have clients that literally come to the table for their home loan with virtually no money, or get reimbursed from their escrow deposit, and so that's a good thing when it's right for that client. Sometimes it's not right for that client. They're better off. Their payments are going to be lower if they can come up with that money on their own. But that's part of the process that I go through with them is, what are your ultimate goals? What's the most important to you? Is the most important thing the lowest possible payment that you can get? Or do you have more, money that you're willing to put down? What are those goals that we're trying to accomplish? So that way I can tell you as the realtor, they need to stay at this price point of a house or below,
right.
And oftentimes I'll tell you guys, they have a little wiggle room if they fall in love with something, but this is where their goals are. And if we push that limit, they're going to be uncomfortable with that future prospect of a home, because people oftentimes get into something and are then uncomfortable because they realize the other things that go along with a new house, and aren't prepared for the utilities and the water and all of the things that go along with that, even the landscaping or pool companies.
Yep. What's the number one reason people get disqualified from loans nowadays? What are you seeing the most?
Primarily, it would be credit, but that is something that's workable, because oftentimes I tell people who are most scared of credit being an issue that this is a short-term problem to a long-term solution. And once I see their credit, I can run analyzers and, give them the proper tools to get those things, moved off. And I think that's probably the biggest downfall from people, is if they're not quite there credit-wise. But honestly, that's also the biggest concern and the reason why people are afraid to talk to a lender. But it's the reason they should talk to a lender sooner versus later, because I can give them, I'm not a credit repair agency by any stretch of the means, but I've been in the business long enough to know, what happens. And I do have analyzers and tools that can be run that can say, hey, if you do this or you do that, your credit score will improve 20, 30, 100 points sometimes. And that will help them get to that next level. Otherwise, sometimes it's just income, in this market. Sometimes their income isn't quite there. And then we're going to look for resources like, do you have an opportunity for a co-signer or a co-borrower? Is there somebody who can help out that way? Those are typically the two disqualifying things that I run into. Other than that, it's each, there's a myriad of reasons why people decide not to move forward. But as far as actually not qualifying, it's generally either debt to income or credit. And those two are very, very intertwined, because if your debt to income is too high, your credit is often, running a little bit low.
Yeah, I was just at a conference where it was reported there's $1.6 trillion of revolving credit card debt in the United States.
Yep.
Mind blowing.
Yeah. We are getting ready to be into an unfortunate refinance boom in the mortgage industry because of that reason. People are racking up their 24, 25% interest rate credit cards. And unfortunately, I've already experienced having somebody who had a 2.99 interest rate that just can't, it's still better off for them to do a cash out refi, which is one of the reasons why having that equity position in your home is so important. It does give you a tool in the future, but they're looking at cash out refi to be able to, ultimately reduce and repay those higher interest debts.
Yeah, I love that you truly work with your buyers and just meet them where they're at and, create a path for them. And, on our side, it's important that a lender works with a realtor as partners so the buyer feels like they have a team. So how do you assist, your realtor partners to ensure a seamless transaction for your clients?
I think one of the most important things is to constantly refer back to the agent. When I'm going through these positions, a lot of times, whether it's say Bella or Jeff or Chase or whoever that is, when I'm having that conversation with a client, I use their agent's name frequently. I let them know that, oh, I've already had this discussion with Bella and she's aware of this situation and what's going on next. And we're going to go through, each stage accordingly. And that way they know that we are a team, that we're communicating, that we're having those next phases. I don't just rely on them to give me the information. I let them know that I'm having these open conversations with them. I do tell them that obviously there are things that as a lender, I do not divulge to the realtor. There are certain things that are private personal information to them. So I don't want to let them think that, all of their financial information is being shared, because it's not. But things like, I'll let them know, hey, we're going to get ready to order your appraisal. You wrote a contract with everybody called up. They checked with me first to make sure that I could do a 20-day close of escrow. In order to do that, we talked about, ordering the appraisal relatively quickly. So I'm going to stay in close contact with Bella so that she can let me know as soon as that Benzer is approved that I can get that ordered. These are the little things that happen that we're constantly, we send out loan status updates, and I let the client know that we're sending those out so that they, number one, know that we're communicating not only with the, buyer's agent, but with the listing agent, the title company. Everybody needs to work as a team. I have a large team because I have my marketing person, I have my loan processing assistant, I have my realtor friend. You guys are all part of that team. You are essential to getting this transaction done, just as the title company is, so it's very, very important to have these different, trusted individuals. And it's important for me to constantly reassure the client that we're in communication, and so that they know that it's a one team effort. Yeah, it really, really is. In all of our industries, when we're vetting each other, then we're just making that client feel much more comfortable with the position that they've taken, to basically choose to hire each of us, because they do have that choice. They don't have to move forward with any specific agent or lender. And so, to me, that's a huge thing, to let people know that they've selected me and I get the pleasure of working with them, rather than this is just another transaction on the books.
Yeah, and that goes to speak to, the professionals that Tracy and I work with, that Bella and Chase work with. We vet people, right? Because they're an extension of us. If I'm gonna refer Tracy to somebody, I know the kind of job that Tracy does, right? And so I know that's going to ultimately come back on me in a good or bad way. So it's like we take a lot of time vetting our colleagues and partners in the business. So, kind of going down the home stretch, Tracy, what are you excited about? As far as next year, and any projects you're working on that you're kind of excited about?
Well, I will say one of the things I'm most excited about for 2025 is actually our joint venture with the Pro Insight Network. We're just now talking about vetting our referral sources, who we love and trust. And you actually brought this on to me. And so I'm super, super excited about it, because this is our opportunity to be a part of a larger network of vetted professionals in this industry and in the home buying process, not just realtors and lenders, but painters and commercial lenders, and whether it's a landscaper or somebody who is a home inspector, all of these things. And we get to choose our network of people that we feel are preferred and promote them. And by promoting them, it helps us promote each other. It helps us get people out there. And it's so exciting to me to be a part of it, honestly, because I think of it this way. Like, I am a lender not only in Arizona, but I do business in, I have the availability to do business in over 30 different states. And I've done business in probably, 15 to 20. And so it's important for me to know that I have somebody who somebody else has worked with, who I trust, even if it's not somebody that I've worked with. And I'm so excited because, I have clients in South Carolina, Kansas, New Mexico, Colorado, California, and I can use this app now to be like, hey, here's a great introduction to a professional who I know is going to take care of you the way I take care of you. And I think that for 2025 is going to be fantastic for not only hopefully their businesses, but for my business as well, because these are the things you put out into the market that, really do help you become that professional that when you're out there doing good things and referring good people, it all comes back around.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it. We're forming a national and a local network of vetted professionals. So if you're sitting here and in our national audience today and you're in South Carolina and you want to buy a house, you can contact me because I know agents around the country. If you want to work with a lender, you can contact Tracy because Tracy can help you. And that is the amazing thing about this business is Tracy, myself, Bella, and Chase, we don't think small. We just don't. We think big. So we want to make sure whatever you come at us with, we're going to help you. So with that Pro Insight Network, if you're an agent or a lender and you would like to do more business by referral, because this business is all about relationships, please let us know. We can help you because ultimately it's always about benefiting the consumer, about the homeowner. That's why we do these things, to make sure you get the best experience in buying a home. So Tracy, this has been great. Thank you for sharing your life and your story with us. And we are so honored to just be in business with you and the things you're doing. So any last words before we say goodbye to everybody?
So I know we talked a little bit about, home ownership and education and things like that. And, Bella had made a few comments about new home buyers and some resources. So one of the things I wanted to give people is, if they do visit my website, which is tracyelliotthomeloans.com. And, we can put that up on the screen as well. And I have a screen tab that says Home View Education. And when you go on this Home View Education, there's a lot of tools, resources, calculators. You do have to sign up for it. It's a Fannie Mae product, but I recommend it to people, especially first-time home buyers, to be able to go in and get some tools to see where they stand. Oftentimes people are scared to, make that initial, I guess, introduction to this industry, and they want to have something that they can go and explore first. And this is a great starting point. Obviously I would love for anybody to give me a call and, we can go through it together. I'm more than happy to, teach whoever has those questions. Again, my clients are not necessarily just the here and now clients. I want the client that's going to be a long-term. And if that's getting them on the right path, then that's, fantastic for me. So, there's lots of tools and resources on my webpage, and that will direct people to, get the process started that's right for them.
And that website again was what?
It's Tracy Elliott Home Loans with an S.com.
Awesome. And there's no harm in finding out what your purchasing power is, because I'm sure Tracy offers a non-obligation consultation. So it behooves you to talk to her to find out what you can do. And it also behooves you to talk to people like Bella and Chase on my team, because we can help you determine, what house you want, right? And in the process of buying a home, there's a lot to it nowadays, folks. And we take that fiduciary service very seriously. So look us up, the Jeff Sutherland team. You can look at jeffsutherland.com. Then of course you have Tracy's website as well. So for that, guys, thanks for listening today to the Jeff Sutherland Show. I hope it blesses you, and let us know how we can help you with anything when it comes to buying or selling your house. Thanks everybody, and have a great day.
Thank you.